If you are single, if you have no children, and if your home is paid off, there is a question you have probably already asked and never had a straight answer to. If Medicaid ever pays for your care, what happens to that house? And who ends up deciding? Here's the short version. Every protection built into the Medicaid rules requires a husband, a wife, or a child. Every single one of them. If you do not have one, almost none of them reach you. There is one document. It is not a trust. It is not a deed. It does not cost thousands of dollars, and it does not need a 5-year head start. You can sign it in an afternoon, and it is the only thing in this entire subject that you cannot go back and do later. Everything else on this list stays available until the day you apply for care. This one closes the moment your health does. You will hear this document sold as though one signature protects your savings. It does not. What it protects is something else, and for you, it is worth more. It only makes sense once you can see where it sits. There are 3 stages. The first one takes your accounts while you are alive. The second one takes the house after you are gone. And the third one is not Medicaid at all. It is the one almost nobody covers. It is the one that document actually solves. And for someone in your position, it is bigger than the other 2 put together. Start with the first stage, while you are very much alive. To have Medicaid pay for long-term care, you must spend your countable assets down to your state limit. Countable means your bank accounts, your certificates of deposit, your stocks and brokerage accounts, a second property, and the cash value sitting inside a whole life insurance policy. In most states, that limit for a single person is around $2,000. A handful of states are far more generous, and a few are even tighter than that. California is the outlier. It brought its own asset test back at the start of this year at $130,000 for a single person, and that figure is temporary. It is scheduled to fall to about $21,000 in the middle of next year. So, if you are in California, the number you are planning around today is not the number you will be planning around then. Some things are left alone while you are alive. Your primary home, up to an equity limit that runs from roughly $750,000 in most states to a little over $1 million in the highest value states. One vehicle, your personal belongings, a burial plot, and certain prepaid funeral arrangements. Term life insurance, which has no cash value to reach. Now here is where being single changes the arithmetic completely. When a married person needs this care, federal law protects the husband or wife still at home. That spouse keeps the house. That spouse keeps a vehicle. That spouse keeps a substantial share of the couple's savings, so that caring for one of them does not leave the other with nothing. Look closely at what that is. It is a protection for a spouse. It is not a protection for a person. If there is no spouse, nobody is standing in that position, and nothing is being sheltered on your behalf. The rule is not being applied harshly to you. The rule has no place to attach. The same is true of every other door people talk about. Transferring the home to a husband or wife is fully exempt, and that needs a spouse. The caregiver child exemption lets you hand the home to an adult child who lived with you and cared for you for 2 years, and that needs a child. There is a protection for a blind or disabled child of any age, and that needs a child. A spouse, a child, a child. Hold that pattern, because you are about to see it again. That is the money gone. The house is still standing at this point, which brings us to the second stage, the one everybody has heard of and almost everybody gets the timing wrong on. It is called estate recovery, and it happens after you die. Federal law requires every state to seek repayment from the estates of people aged 55 and older who received long-term care through Medicaid. Not some states, all of them. And the home is very often the only thing left to recover from, for a reason that is almost circular. The home was left alone the whole time you were alive, so it is still there. The law does place shields on this. A state may not recover while there is a surviving spouse. It may not recover while there is a child under 21. It may not recover while there is a blind or disabled child of any age. There is that pattern again. A spouse, a child, a child. If none of them exist, nothing defers it and nothing pauses it. There is one exception that does exist for some people in your position. It is called the sibling exemption. If you have a brother or a sister who already owns part of your home and who lived in it with you for at least a year before you went into care, the home can pass to them. That is a real door. But count what it needs all at once. A living sibling. Who co-owns the property? Who moved in? Who stayed a full year before you needed care? For most people hearing this, that door is closed by circumstance rather than by law. So the honest summary is not that you have zero options. It is that, Almost every protection in this system was built around a family. And if you do not have one, most of them never reach you. Now, everything I have described so far happens to your property. The third stage happens to you while you are alive to experience it. And this is the one that document actually solves. Ask yourself what happens if you lose the ability to make your own decisions. Not when you die, before that, a stroke, a fall, dementia arriving quietly across a year of small moments nobody outside your house ever sees. If you have a spouse, they step in. If you have adult children, one of them steps in. If you have neither, and you have not named anyone in advance, somebody still has to be given legal authority over your money, your home, and your medical care. And the only body that can grant that authority is a court. So a judge appoints a guardian. In many cases, that is a professional or a public guardian, which means a person you have never met, appointed to a caseload, now deciding what happens to your money, what happens to your house, what medical care you receive, and where you live. This is where the subject usually gets exaggerated. So here is the fair version. Most guardians are not villains, and courts do supervise them. But supervision is not the same as choice. The point is not that something criminal happens to you. The point is that the most personal decisions of your life get made by whoever the court could find, rather than by whoever you would have picked. And notice the step before all of it. A court only reaches for that power when there is nobody already holding it, which means the whole thing turns on one question. Did you name somebody, or did you not? So here's the document. It is a durable power of attorney for your finances, paired with a healthcare proxy for your medical decisions. 2 pages doing 2 halves of the same job. You name a person you trust, a friend, a niece or a nephew, a neighbor you have known for 20 years. Anyone you choose, rather than anyone a court can find. The word that matters is durable. A plain power of attorney can stop working at the exact moment you become incapable, which is the moment you need it most. A durable one keeps working. If you take one piece of vocabulary from this video, take that one, and ask for it by name. The healthcare proxy is the other half, and people skip it. That is the one that says who speaks for you about treatment, about surgery, about a feeding tube, about whether you go home or into a facility. The financial document does not cover any of that. You want both. Why this rather than something more clever? Because of 4 things that are true of nothing else in this subject. It cannot be done later, once capacity is gone. It has no waiting period and no 5-year clock, so it works the day it is signed. It costs less than any other option here, and it is the only one that decides who is standing beside you while everything else plays out. Now the limit, and it is a real one. Naming someone does not stop the spend down. It does not stop estate recovery. Anybody telling you that one signature protects your savings from long-term care costs is not being straight with you. Real protection of assets is a years-long process, usually built around an irrevocable trust signed well before you ever apply. In most states, the look back on transfers runs a full 5 years. California currently runs a shorter one, which is one more reason the answer here depends on where you live. Either way, it needs a qualified elder law attorney, and far more warning than most people get. A revocable living trust does not do it. If you have that runway, use it. And that is a different conversation than this one. What naming someone does is decide 2 things that are otherwise decided for you. Who holds authority over your life while you are still living it? And who receives whatever is left when it is over? That second one matters more than people expect. Somebody wrote this under the last video on this channel. I live in New Jersey, no living relatives. Medicaid said if I have no living relatives, they want their money back. Anything I can do so I can leave the money to my friend's kid? The answer to that question is yes. With no spouse and no children, the law does not simply stop. It works outward through your family tree. And if it finds nobody at all, what is left goes to the state. You are allowed to interrupt that, and most people in your position have never been told so. You can name a friend. You can name a friend's child. You can name a neighbor, a church, or a cause you cared about. And 2 of the ways you do it are free and need no lawyer at all. Ask your bank for a payable on death beneficiary on your accounts. Ask your brokerage for a transfer on death designation. Both are forms. Both cost nothing. You keep complete control while you are alive. The person you name has no access until you are gone. And the money passes straight to them without going through probate. A will does the same job for everything those forms do not cover. And it is where you name who settles your affairs. For the house itself, some states allow a transfer on death deed, and a handful allow what is called a ladybird deed. Whether that is available to you depends entirely on your state, and whether it survives estate recovery also depends on your state. So that is a question for an attorney rather than a video. There is an objection under every video on this subject, and it deserves an answer rather than a comment fight. Somebody always asks why a person with assets should have any of this paid by other people. It is a fair question, so here is a fair answer. Nothing I have described avoids a bill. The spin down still happens. The recovery still happens. What we have been talking about is not whether you pay. It is who decides for you when you no longer can, and who receives what is left when it is over. Those decisions get made by somebody either way. The only question is whether it is somebody you chose. One honest word before I go. I am not a lawyer, and I am not describing your particular situation. These rules move from state to state. The asset limits change, the equity limits change, and estate recovery reaches further in some states than in others. Use your own state Medicaid office for the numbers, and a qualified elder law attorney for anything that touches your home. What I have laid out is the shape of the thing, not advice about your life. And if you take one step this week, make it the smallest one. A durable power of attorney and a healthcare proxy. Not because it saves your savings, because it will not. Because it is the only piece of this that expires without telling you. Then think of one person who needs to hear this. Someone living alone, with no children, who has never signed a paper naming anyone, and who assumes that because there is nothing to fight over, there is nothing to plan. Send this to them. Almost nobody in this situation loses control because they made a bad decision. They lose it because nobody ever told them a decision was theirs to make.